my friends, how's it going? It's Ultimus, and this is going to be our first video in what will continue to be a series on your intro to PvP. I haven't really thought of any clever names for this series yet, other than I just want to get this out and going, because the more I think about it, the less likely this is going to happen. So, I want to make it happen. What I would like for this to be is a bare bones, absolute basic guide to PvP. This guide is going to be applicable for any class or spec you play, and I'm going to be going over some things that you might need to know and should learn and practice in order to help get yourself familiar and comfortable in PvP situations. This is not going to be a high-rated PvP guide, anything of that caliber. This is simply going to be a guide for anyone who has no experience in PvP, little experience in PvP, or just wants to maybe get a refresher course in the absolute basics. One of the absolute biggest reasons I wanted to do this video was because I remember when I was first getting into PvP, I couldn't really find any videos on some of the basic things I should know or pay attention to get better at PvP. Everything was advanced stuff, and while there's nothing wrong with that, and it's great that those resources are out there, I just think that there's a gap. And there's just a lot missing for the person who has no idea what to even look at for starters when it comes to PvP. So, if this is for you, stick around. For starters, one of the absolute most important things in PvP is movement. Doesn't matter if you're playing a healer, a DPS, anything of that sort, simple DPS caster, melee. The most important thing is movement, and you want to be able to move properly. Now, of course, standard out of the box default settings for move are W for move forward, Q for strafe left, E for strafe right, and then we have the A and D keys for turning, and then your S key is going to be for backing up, or as we call it, backpedaling. However, these are not always the most efficient keys for you to move with. What I would say is more important or better to get familiar with moving with is your mouse. If you hold down your right and left mouse, you're going to move forward, and this gives you immediate control over your character and frees you up with your left hand for all of your keybinds and skills. Now, I do sometimes still use W for walking, but I will constantly be turning with my right mouse button, not necessarily Q or E. Now, movement is important because you want to be able to get away from doing stuff like this to move. You don't want to just have to stop to do that. It's clunky, it's not as responsive, and it's going to be tougher to work the pillar game and to be able to line of sight. However, if you compare something like this to now with my mouse and the side strafe keys, you're able to see that we get a little bit of a smoother run around, turn around, a little bit more responsive. Now, these are the kind of things that can be practiced simply on points of interest like that, like this pillar there. You can of course do it around the targeting dummy. I also really like to do this in old raids, as silly as that sounds, while I'm just going through farming for gold or transmog gear. That way I don't have to worry about being bothered, and it's just me and the NPC, and I'm constantly walking around them in circles to get used to doing that while attacking, because as a melee player, you are definitely going to be doing that a lot. You're going to be walking around targets trying to get behind them or keep them from getting behind you, and so you want to get comfortable with that. And so that can be accomplished again by holding down your Q or your E key and simply going to the side. And of course you can walk, use just W and do that, or if you're comfortable with it, you can use just your mouse. To recap on that, mouse movement is definitely more ideal, but it can be done with Q, W, or E, all of those. One of the biggest reasons I say get used and familiar to and teach yourself how to move effectively with your mouse, again holding down that right mouse button, is because of our next topic, and that is keybinds. Now, if you look down here on my action bars, obviously everything is keybound. You want to get familiar with keybinds. Now, this is something you want to ease your way into if you're unfamiliar with keybinds, or if you've never used them before, or if you've only ever used just the out-of-box keybinds that you get, the 1 through equals or whatever it is that you have on your action bar. Once you get past that and you start using shift modifiers or control or alt modifiers, I will never forget the day my friend in college showed me how to keybind, and ever since then it has been night and day experience. So shout out to my late friend Ian for that. We miss you, buddy. So I honestly say this guide is probably inspired by you, someone who helped me out in my early days of playing WoW and getting me past my noobery. If I'm constantly trying to walk around a target with my keybinds over here with the W, A, and S keys and the Q keys and all that stuff like that, it's going to make it really difficult to use any of my skills. However, if I'm walking with my mouse, simply holding the direction that I'm going with one finger, say Q and E or S and D, that frees up my other finger to use skills. So as you can see here, I am strafing around the target and I am popping off skills, and I'm going in different directions depending on which side I need to and what might be more comfortable for my fingers. And I don't say this as someone who has this all figured out. A lot of this sometimes I'm still learning as well, but these are things that I found that are just absolute need to know and things that must be learned for someone to get decent at PvP at any level. This is what's going to take you up into finding success in arenas and not being killed all the time in BGs and actually pulling ahead and doing some good damage. That's not to say that you can't effectively play your class as a clicker, but you're going to see, I think, a smoother style of gameplay, and it's going to make it a lot easier for macros. For all this, I do recommend a multi-button mouse. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It doesn't have to be a Naga or the Corsair Scimitar, anything like that. It doesn't have to be a 19-button mouse. It can simply be a 5-button mouse if that's what you're into. You don't even honestly need a mouse at all for it. You can effectively do it, and I've seen people effectively keybind without a multi-button mouse. It just makes it a lot easier because then as I'm strafing again, I've got skills that I can pop off using my mouse, and I'm not always constantly reliant on my left hand. So these are things that, again, using these and beginning to practice these things, I think you will begin to see great improvements in your PvP and in your mobility and your reaction times, which is a huge factor in PvP. Reaction times are what make and break games. If your reaction time is completely dependent on you mousing over a skill to click it, like, oh my gosh, I'm almost dying, I need to click die by the sword, it's so much slower than just reaching down and hitting X, which is what I have mine bound to, X. So much faster. That's going to save you games, and it's going to put you in a better position. So if you're unfamiliar with keybinds of that sort, I definitely encourage you to use them. Now, that being said, as we mentioned before, please do go into them slowly. There's no need to rebind all your keys so then you're stuck not being able to play your character for a good week to 2 weeks or even longer, depending on how often you have to play or simply how hard it is for you to pick up on these new things. Do them one at a time. Slowly introduce yourself to your new keybinds. I've been working on my keybinds for years, and I finally got them to a place where I actually like them. All through Kata, all through Mob, I was pretty much messing with my keybinds and changing them around to where they were getting more and more efficient. You might find yourself in that position. So be patient with it, take it slow, don't get frustrated. Slowly introduce those keybinds into your rotation, so don't just change them all up, don't just make everything different. Say start down here, keep everything as you assign, 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't like to go to 5 because it makes it a little uncomfortable to reach. I have big hands, so it's not impossible, but it tends to take me off of my home keys that I like for, and I don't want to be fumbling around my keyboard when I'm trying to PvP, so I keep it safe and don't go past 4. After that, of course, you see I have G for my defensive stance, and once I'm in defensive stance, G is also what's going to swap me back to battle stance. Using things like that to keep it intuitive, to where it's smooth and flows, are going to help you a lot. We move on to C, which is my Berserker's Rage. R is my Heroic Leap. And I've got Naga buttons down here for all these. But I didn't do all these keybinds at a time. I would do slowly but surely. Like when I got my Naga, I only bound the first 6. And then I learned to get comfortable with those. Then I bound the last 3 that I'm using. And I don't really use 10, 11, and 12 just simply because it's a little awkward to use. Same thing goes with all my shift modifiers. 1, 2, 3, and 4 are what I use. I do use shift 5. But I don't use it all that often. I simply have it up there kind of to keep track of it. Because I do have my shift or my focus charge built into my Mortal Strike as well. And we will talk about macros in another video for sure. I'm not going to let that one slip by, but I don't feel like that's definitely a place to start for our basic PvP video that we're going to be going over. Keybinds are completely relative to what you find comfortable. I had a buddy who thought it was the weirdest thing ever that I use shift, and I know a lot of people do tend to use alt for their modifiers on their abilities. I, however, find shift to be most comfortable, so work with it a bit, find what's more comfortable, what feels more natural to you, and roll with it. Again, you don't want to just sit around and mimic someone else's keybinds because they might not work for you. I could go over to my friend's house, sit on his computer, and I probably will not be able to pick up and play his class at all, even if I'm familiar with the class, because again, his keybinds are going to be different. They are unique to him and his play style. So take time, figure it out. That's what these target dummies are for. And again, one of my favorite places to practice is in old raids. There's really not the threat of dying, so if you're worried about gold repair bills and all of that, you don't have to worry about it. You're moving around and you're messing with actual combat situations, so it's going to be a little more responsive and it's going to be a little more intuitive rather than just hitting on a targeting dummy. So if you're going into those raids and you're just soloing them, because half the time we want gold and transmogs anyway, so it's not like you're just wasting your time in there, but it's going to get you familiar with your keybinds in an actual combat situation, and you'll decide, I like that one there, or that one's not really fitting for me, let me find something else to put there. Tying keybinds and movement together. Now if you'll notice here, I have my hamstring bound to S, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but I do want to connect these two for a bit for you. One of the reasons I mentioned first that you get familiar with using your mouse for movement rather than simply relying on W, A, S, D, Q, and E is because that's going to free you up to unbind some of your movement keys and use them for attacks. Because let me tell you, it is extremely nice to have S right there that I can just reach back and click on with my middle finger so I can land a hamstring if I need. Now I do have hamstring bound to my rend as well, but sometimes I just want to pop a hamstring up and it's fine. I have the same thing with some of my other classes and abilities. I've got certain skills there on the S key, and it is so much easier and it's better use of that button than simply using it for a backpedal, because you should never be backpedaling in PvP unless you want to become the backpedaling mage. Then I believe that's socially acceptable in certain circles. But again, it seems like a waste of a key to me to let S be a backpedal key when you really don't need it, and then what it could be used for a skill. I only recently switched over to using S as a combat skill. It took quite a bit of time for me to get comfortable doing that, but eventually I was able to do it. There were many arenas and there were many battlegrounds where I made just dumb decisions because I was trying to back up and I shouldn't have been. That being said, that's another one of those ones that I would say introduce slowly. Don't unbind all your movement keys, do it slowly. Interface. Let's talk about the interface. Interface is probably one of the more important things of PvP simply because you don't want a clunky or an interruptive interface. You want to find an interface that's going to work for you. I know a lot of healers that keep all of their targeting icons right here in the center because that way they can see exactly what is going on with everybody's health. That's where they like it, that's where they want it, and that's great for them. That doesn't exactly work for me though. I like having my plate here, I like having my targets plate here. It's still center screen, but it's not in the way of anything. That way I still have full field of view of my combat situation. Especially because this is usually gone in arenas, so I'm not worried about that. Map's not too big and clunky in the corner, so I have a good full range of view of the arena, of the map, and it's great. Focus targets over here, so again, still centered to where I can still see it, see what's going on, but it's not so far toward the center that it's blocking my vision of anything else, but it's not so far out of the way that I'm going to miss things. And again, this is going to be something that is completely dependent on you, on your playstyle, what you feel you need. Do you feel you need to see everything that's going on in the battlefield, or do you not? And things like that. So again, mess around with that. Maybe you like the simple, standard, out-of-the-box interface with the targeting up here. That's totally fine. Dig it, leave it the way it is. If that's your jam and that's what allows you to play the game effectively, go for it. But don't necessarily feel like needing to set your interface up exactly like a well-known or popular or successful PvPer is going to make you a better PvPer. Don't let that discourage you from trying it out, because you might find that that's a good interface for you, but be willing to mix it up and change it depending on your playstyle. And one of the reasons good keybinds and effective interface works well together is because once you get those two down, you're going to be taking your eyes off of the battle less. You're going to be not needing to look at your action bars as much, and so you're able to still keep your eyes peeled to the screen and being able to pay attention to what's going on in the match rather than constantly needing to necessarily look around. You're just going to get more familiar with it. So again, this is another one of those situations where these two tie together very well, and you're going to see, I think, an improvement as you begin to practice both of them. So far we've gone over movement, keybinds, interface. Last but not least, what we're going to talk about is understanding of your skills. This is probably one of the most underrated things you can do, but it is one of the most important. And I want to reiterate this. This is one of the most important things you can do to get yourself in a good position in PvP and see improvements in your play. Understand your skills. Now, this is not the most exciting or riveting thing about World of Warcraft at all. I mean, some people really enjoy it. I'm on the fence about it. Sometimes I find it boring. Other times I'm completely enthralled with it. But I understand that it's important, and that is reading your skills. Understand, is it an instant? Does it have a cast time? Does it have a cooldown? When you get the stuns and crowd control effects, and we'll get to this in a later video, what are the diminishing returns on it? Things like that. You got to understand what these skills specifically do. For example, Berserker Rage, you go Berserk, removing and granting immunity to fear, sap, and incapacitate effects for 6 seconds. That is a 30-second cooldown, and it is an instant cast. If I didn't read that properly and I wasn't paying attention, I might think, oh, that also removes stuns, and I'm sitting here trying to pop it to get myself out of stuns, and I'm thinking, what the heck is going on? My skills aren't working, this is bugged, this is dumb. No, if I would have just read my tooltip properly, I would understand it only grants immunity to fear, sap, and incapacitates. Having that knowledge in the back of my head allows me to better understand when it is appropriate and when is the best time to use those skills, and of course that will only get better with more practice. Read your skills, understand, especially for example as a warrior, do they have a stance requirement? Do I have to be in battle stance? For example, Colossus Smash, I have to be in battle stance. I wouldn't know that if I didn't read my skill. I cannot express enough how important it is to go over your tooltips, understand your skills, not just your activate skills, talents as well, but almost more importantly are your passive skills. Things that affect your abilities and your procs. Whether it's simply for understanding what comps you're going to work well with, what classes you're going to work well with so you're not double stacking on buffs, things like that. Come to an understanding of your skills and abilities. You will understand what it is your class is designed to do, what they can do, what they can do well, and it's going to give you a better edge in PvP understanding your abilities. Every class has the core abilities page here, and this gives you an idea of your main rotation. This isn't going to teach you your main rotation, especially in PvP, because there really isn't a rotation, but there are skills that take precedent over others. For example, Colossus Smash as a warrior, this is one of our most important skills because this is our window for some of our biggest damage and burst. So when I have Colossus Smash and understanding my window, this is one of the most important skills I have because this is going to where I want to be dumping the most of my mortal strikes, my executes, any of my big damage and my cooldowns into. I don't want to just pop Colossus Smash willy-nilly and just, let it be what it is. I wouldn't know that if I didn't read over my skills. And so this doesn't matter if you're a shaman, a druid, a warrior, a priest, whatever it is, understanding of your skills is going to take you leaps and bounds farther than you would just going in and face rolling the keyboard. Unless you're a Death Knight, then that's how you actually play a Death Knight. It's true, I've seen it done. A couple other things to polish off this video before we draw it to a close. Some other important information I think is good for you guys to know if you're just getting into PvP or maybe are a little rusty on it or just want to know more. The Gladiator Sanctum in your garrison is an excellent thing to add. On one side, you're going to have the healing dummy where you're able to target it, check it out, and you're able to cast your heals on it. So as a healer, you're able to practice your rotation, learn what procs you want to take advantage of, things like that, rather than just only having to be able to do it on friendly targets. So that's a very useful addition, I find. And if we pull over to the other side, back here behind the Gladiator Sanctum, and if you look over here on the opposite side of the healing dummy, you're going to see targeting dummies. If you're trying to still gear attune, that might be another reason you want to use the Gladiator Sanctum. By doing Ashran, you're going to be getting more gear, getting the Broken Bones, which is going to proc gold, conquest points, honor, as well as gear for you to get for your tune, helping you get that character geared up faster. So you might want to consider grabbing that Gladiator Sanctum. Definitely had more use in the very beginning of Warlords of Draenor, but it's not completely useless, I don't find, even at this stage in the game. A couple other notes as we wrap it up completely, some things that really can't be shown via gameplay or anything like that, but it is some things that need to be understood for you if you are just starting off in PvP or if you are new to the scene. Please know and understand that you're going to lose a lot. A lot. If you talk to even some of the best players in the world, they will tell you they still lose a decent amount. You're never going to get to a point where you never ever lose. That's just how the game works, and there's nothing wrong with it. Please don't go into PvP with a chip on your shoulder that you are the best of your class and you have nothing to learn, because all you're going to do is frustrate yourself, blame everybody else, and you're not going to find anybody that wants to actually PvP with you, because nobody wants to PvP with a douche. Coming into PvP with a more humble approach and attitude is going to get you farther. You're going to be willing to learn, admit that you've made mistakes, pick up from those mistakes, attempt to correct them. You're going to have a better demeanor in a PvP situation. If you're using Skype, you're not going to turn into a rage monster. You're going to be able to be patient with your arena partners, and you'll find that you both are actually getting better in the game, which in the long run is going to be better for you both, because then you will see a higher win ratio. I cannot express how important that is. If there's nothing else that gets taken away, and if I was going to make a video on nothing else here, it would be that. Please go into it with the right attitude. The right attitude is going to make PvP a more enjoyable experience by leaps and bounds. Another thing to mention for PvP is play what you want. Don't let anybody else tell you what to play. You play the class and spec that you want, and you are going to get the most enjoyment out of. I've been playing a warrior for 9 years. I know it doesn't show. I should probably be a lot better than I am, but it's the class I enjoy. Again, I cannot express how important it is to play what you want. I will give you an example for this before we close the video. One of my absolute best friends, when he used to play WoW back in End of Wrath of the Lich King and Cataclysm and a little bit in MoP, he absolutely loved his Fire Mage. Everyone was constantly telling him to play Frost, play Frost, play Frost, it's better, and he said, no, I want to play Fire. And you know what he did? He played Fire, and he had the best time playing Fire, and he got pretty darn good at it too, because he played what he wanted. So, all that being said, I know that this video was a little bit longer than I liked. I'm going to try to condense it down as best as possible, so hopefully this is easier to get through for you guys. But I hope this was helpful. I'm planning on doing more of these videos, at least one of them a week. It's going to be in a series and a playlist all of its own. And again, we're going to continue to go through some of the absolute basics for PvP, hoping to see you guys get better at PvP as well, especially for the people that have never done it before, as I find that there's just really nothing out there on YouTube or anything on the internet for the absolute bare bones beginner when it comes to PvP. So, as always guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I'll catch you next time.